Davis steps under center. Gibson and McClendon behind him. Davis with motion by Richard. Will give the ball to McClendon. He leaps. Oh, he doesn't get in. He fumbled the football. Carolina holds. The game is over. And Carolina has won the game.
Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Wolford again. Wolford the other way. At the 30, the 40. Wolford to midfield. Miles Wolford with the pick. The heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory.
Left side of the line. Hood standing to Williams' right. Williams gonna throw. One-on-one. Davis has it. Touchdown. Carolina wins. Carolina is the Coastal Division champion. Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
Connor Barth for the possible win. Snap, spot, kick away, high enough, long enough. It's good! It's good! Carolina has won the game on a 42-yard field goal by freshman Connor Barth. Good gosh, dirty.
This is the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. Hey guys, and welcome into this edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. It's Anthony Pagnotta back with you guys as always, and today we have got a special guest that is on with us. It is Tim Winters from UCNC football. He covers Union County football. So, for me, this is a guy that's been just a legend. I remember him from when I was in high school. He was covering not only my high school, Union Academy, but also the Union County area. He does such a great job. And so we figured we'd bring him on to talk a little bit of Union County football with us because the Tar Heels have some major targets in Union County. And, of course, that's where our star quarterback, Sam Howell, hails from. So, of course, we have to talk a little bit of Sam Howell with him. But first, Tim, how's it going today, man?
I'm doing great, Anthony. Pleasure to be on the show. Thanks.
Yeah, man. So, we had to get you on because, look, Sam Howell is just tearing it up. And right now, there's a debate going on in Tar Heel country about where he ranks among the quarterbacks nationally. I don't know, if you want to weigh in on that just yet, but really, my biggest question to you is this something that, being a guy that was following Sam a little bit throughout his high school career, this is something that we probably should have expected from him, coming out of the high school level, especially because he saw so much success as a freshman when he took over at Sun Valley High School, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sam's always played above his age in terms of maturity, I believe. And, I will say this, though. As great a high school career as he had, to come in as a freshman to a D1 school and do what he's done this year, it has surprised me, to be quite honest. I thought, obviously he's had some growing pains from game to game, but the numbers that he has put up, it's beyond my expectations, to be honest. He has played above anything I thought. And not that he wasn't capable of, but that's asking a lot to get a kid to come into a program and to learn and to pick up the speed of the game. It's really been amazing. And the one thing I've always looked at Sam in terms of quarterback comparison, and I have compared him at times to Brett Favre. And Sam was always a gambler, a little bit of a gambler. He'd throw into those tight spots, and in high school you can get away with it. But he threw a number of interceptions, and his completion percentage wasn't always the best amongst the county quarterbacks. But he's shown tremendous discipline as a first-year kid at the college level. So that has definitely surprised me. And at this point now, I think the sky's the limit with where he will go because of his work ethic and how he studies the game and how much time he puts in. I can't even imagine where this kid's going in over the next 3 years.
Well, you mentioned it. He's just having a fantastic year, especially for a true freshman. He ranks right now one of just 3 quarterbacks that has over 2,400 yards, 25 or more touchdowns, and 5 or fewer interceptions so far this season. The other two guys that are doing that, Tim, it is Tua and Joe Burrow. So, yeah, he is up there with some of the best right now. You talked about your comparison to Brett Favre, and when I go back and watch him, we all heard the comparison that everybody was using late on in his recruitment, which was Baker Mayfield. I feel like Brett Favre is a better comparison of kind of what he is. A little bit of a bigger frame, not really a guy that, is going to, we saw Baker was a guy that could run when needed. They would use some read option with him. We've seen at Carolina, whether it's because, as they say, we don't have the depth behind him at quarterback, or if it's really just because they don't feel like that's where Sam is really best utilized with his skill set. He feels more like a Brett Favre type guy, and especially with how well he throws the deep ball. I've said that I think he's probably the best thrower of the deep ball that we've had at Carolina. I mean, is that a stretch, or do you think that this is a guy that we could be talking about, when he gets to the NFL level, being a guy that can throw the deep ball, on the level that we're seeing some of the guys like Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers right now?
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing it right now from him, and I think I draw the Favre comparison as well, not only to the strong arm, and I know that they're going to try to rein this in, and they did after the first few games. It's just Sam throwing his body around, especially on the run, not willing to give up his body for that extra yard, which you don't find that many quarterbacks willing to do it. And he had the size at the high school level, and obviously in college you got to watch that a little bit more. But he's never afraid to throw his body around for that yard. I mean, the kid's about winning, and I think Carolina fans see that from week to week, what this kid's capable of doing on Saturday afternoons and nights.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. I think, we've heard everything you mentioned, how he's a guy that really loves to get in the film room and everything. And we've heard everything, positive so far from the coaching staff, especially from Phil Longo. He's got a really great connection with him. And, I think at this point, the sky is the limit for this guy. The last thing I'll ask you with Howell, when you look at this guy, what do you think his ceiling is? Do you, going into, not only the college level, but also when he gets to the NFL level?
Yeah, it's always hard to project that, but I mean, right now, just knowing the work ethic and how much the game means to him and how much time he puts in and his God-given natural ability and the work he does to improve upon any of that, you're looking at a kid that, as of right now, you got to see that this kid's NFL capable, and now the thing is, does he play all 4 years? I mean, that's the other thing. Does he come out early? These are all things to consider. I think Sam stays the 4 years at Carolina. He comes out, and if his numbers continue to build upon what he's done as a freshman, you're looking at a first-round draft pick.
Well, there we go. Hey, that would be great. Carolina, of course, we know we did have a first-round draft pick a couple years ago at the quarterback position, and Mitch Trubisky. Things not going all that well for Mitch, but you never know. At this point, Sam definitely looks a little bit more advanced than Mitch did in his time on campus. So he's off to a great start. And look, Sam Howell is one of those guys that's kind of opened a door when it comes to national attention on Union County. There are some really great players in Union County right now. And the Tar Heels are really going after some of these guys. Of course, the one that everybody's going to talk about is, of course, Sam's former high school teammate, still at Sun Valley, and four-star wide receiver Gavin Blackwell. Tim, when you look at Gavin Blackwell, is this a guy that you think will be a good fit in the type of offense that Carolina runs if he was to choose to reunite with this former high school quarterback?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I think Gavin's 5'11", just under that 6 foot mark. Probably needs to build up that body a little bit, but he's, you've seen him. He's very fast of foot. He's got some good moves, good hands. So that was Sam's, certainly his favorite receiver his last year or two. And, Sam had the benefit also of Jeremiah Miller, who's over at Coastal Carolina. So Sam had some great receivers to throw to. But Gavin is a very talented receiver. And I know he's got a good handful of offers, but I know that Carolina's going to probably play on that relationship there to try to haul him in. I think he would certainly be more than suitable in that Carolina passing attack.
Well, yeah, you mentioned that. I mean, look, he catches just about everything that's thrown his way. I saw him earlier in the year in the Ortho Carolina kickoff game, and with the guy that was playing in his first game and his quarterback now, Carson Black, he made a couple of great catches that kept Sun Valley at least with a hope in that game. Of course, Charlotte Christian went on to win that game, but he's definitely a special player, and I agree. I think the other school that we're seeing a lot early on with him is Virginia Tech, but I feel like Carolina's got a really good rapport with them because of, the Sam Howell connection. And at this point, I think Sun Valley, is kind of, I don't know if they're pushing Carolina, but look, when you got a guy that was as talented as Sam was and is as revered as he is at that school, I think that, kids going in are definitely going to look at Carolina a little different. Now, the question is will Michael Gonzalez, who is the 2021 three-star offensive lineman, will he look at that the same way? I've seen, some different things on Michael. I've seen, some people have him as a tackle. Some people have him as a guard. I'm impressed with what I've seen from him when I've seen him out at the camps during this past year. What kind of guy would the Tar Heels get if they were to land Michael Gonzalez on the offensive line?
Yeah, you're talking about one of the most impressive kids that are playing line here in the county. Even as a sophomore last year, he came onto the scene, and I know the coaching staff, they love this kid. He absorbs everything. Very quiet, a quiet kid, but a force on the football field. And certainly when people look at numbers locally in the county, Sun Valley started a freshman quarterback who finished the year as the number one passer in yards. And a lot of that goes to the offensive line. And I will say that's an inexperienced line, but it's anchored by the junior Michael Gonzalez. And I think that really speaks to his leadership on the field and having confidence in a quarterback and the skill players around. I think Carolina would be well served to get a kid of that nature. Smart kid, again, quiet, reserved, but out on the field, he lets the actions speak for itself, and he's a force on the football field. A lot of defensive linemen have a tough time getting around this kid, and I think Michael Gonzalez certainly is going to be very attractive for any school looking for him, and he's got one more year to build upon what he's done over at Sun Valley.
Now, do you see him as a guard, or do you see him as more of a tackle? Because I've seen, he originally started as a tackle on 24/7 Sports, and they've now kicked him inside to guard. Do you think he has the size to play guard at the college level?
Yeah, I think it's going to be on the size. I'm not on the road, so you have the numbers probably in front in terms of his height and weight. But, I've seen him a few times this season, and he's probably still will need to put on some more weight, but I think size will determine, where he ultimately will play at the next level.
And so we go from, two guys that are really talented to two guys that are right now one of the top players, not only in the state of North Carolina, but in the state, but in the entire country in their respective classes. We'll start with the 2021 class, and that is Will Shipley. This is a guy that, of course, we're hearing, of course, the connections with his family from NC State, but it seems like he's kind of having his own recruitment because, he's been to Carolina. Clemson is one of the top teams that has been on him for a long time as well. And this is a guy that is just tearing it up. Every single week that I go online, I see his name plastered all over Twitter and everything because he's pretty much the guy that's leading what is a really good Weddington team so far this season. He plays both sides of the football, but it looks like he'll probably be a running back at the next level. Tim, this is a once-in-a-generation talent in Will Shipley. When you look at him, where does he stand amongst some of those guys that you've seen in Union County all time as a prospect?
Yeah, well, there are only so many adjectives you can throw his way. I've been very fortunate since covering Union County, seeing a lot of talented players, and Sam last year coming out, and Will is the county's first 5-star athlete, and with Will Shipley, you are getting a kid. He's just a dynamic offensive force. A lot of people that read about him already, they see his name and they see Christian McCaffrey's name together all the time in comparisons. The thing that makes, when you look at Will Shipley's numbers this year, if anybody wants to take a look at his numbers, he's got about 19 rushing touchdowns. At one point, probably about a week or two, he was scoring a touchdown every 5 touches. He's probably now a touchdown every 6.5, maybe 7 touches. But this kid gets the ball, and he's gashing open big runs. Just a few weeks ago, they were playing locally Marvin Ridge. They went down quickly, and they hand the ball off first play for scrimmage, and Shipley runs 80 yards for a touchdown. And I think he followed it up the following week. They gave up a field goal, and he came right back with another big yard, 83, 84-yard touchdown run. The kid is a workaholic, very talented. You got a smart football mind in Will Shipley, and I hear from coaches that work with him outside of Weddington. They said this kid comes into the gym even when he's not expected to. When he doesn't have an appointment, he's still working. So you're getting one of the hardest working kids in the county, and that talent is displayed on the football field every Friday night. Certainly probably the greatest football player that's going to come out of that school, and he's got one more year, and that's a school that's produced a lot of great talent. But Will Shipley can do it all on the football field on both sides of the ball. But you're right. I think they're looking at the running backs role, and he's got over 25, 26 offers. Clemson, right. Alabama. No, I'll tell you, looking at it, I thought, gosh, it's going to be a hard call for him to be, and your fans are not going to like it, but you mentioned it, being that the mom and dad are both NC State grads.
Right.
It'd be hard to think him not going there, but I'll tell you, I've heard from a good number of people very close to him, not parents or anything, but people that are associated that think that Notre Dame has a more than a fighting shot at this kid because this is a school that would fit his style, being the running back. I do think Stanford also, with that Christian McCaffrey comparison,
right.
I think looking out there. But I would think if you're asking me the top 4, I would say NC State, UNC, Notre Dame, and Stanford at this point.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. I have seen a little bit from Notre Dame on him, and I knew that's one of the guys that they are really prioritizing in this class. But I would expect that Dave Doran at NC State and of course Mac Brown at Carolina are going to make a push for him because, as you mentioned, this is one of the state's most talented players, not only just in this class but really all time. And the comparisons to Christian McCaffrey, I've seen him in person, and those are spot on. He can do just about everything. He's got pretty good size on him as well. He's not really a small guy either. So, there's a lot of different things that he can do that I think could fit just about anywhere in the country because look, if they can't use him at running back for some reason, they can always use him at safety as well because he's a great player there. So, very interesting and really great to see Weddington putting out a player of that caliber because, the people that have, been around Weddington in the county and that have gone out and watched their games, we've always kind of said, like, how are they not putting these guys in bigger schools? And for Will Shipley to be, on the radar like this and be one of those guys that everybody in the country is talking about, it's pretty impressive. So,
just to jump on that last remark, I agree with you completely, Anthony, about the talent. And I think a lot of credit, obviously, you have the talented kids there, but the role that Andy Capone, the head coach at Weddington, has done for that program, the amount of work that he puts in to promote his kids, get them exposed, and the amount of coaches and recruiters that he hosts during the course of a week, A lot of credit needs to go to Andy Capone, one of the best young coaches, and a coach that I think, if you're looking at a guy that might leave the county to go to the next level as a coach, he could be one of them. A very talented guy. But looking right now, I mean, they're the odds-on favorite to get back to another state championship game, and not bad for a guy that's, 28 years old.
Yeah, also won a state championship in his first year last year. Of course, came up under Tim Carson, who's a legendary head coach as well. So, yeah, Andy Capone is definitely one of those guys that I think you're right. Everybody in the area, needs to keep an eye on him. I mean, he's a guy that, when you talk about the great coaches in the area, I mean, everybody's going to bring up the big names in Charlotte, but this is a guy that you just feel like people should be talking more about throughout the state, and he's doing a fantastic job. They got so many great young guys that are going places right now. Of course, Alec Mock is going to Air Force? Yeah, big one for him. That was one of the guys that, if Carolina didn't end up landing Trenton Simpson, I thought we should keep an eye on. It seems like he's probably going to be sticking with Air Force going forward, but that's a very talented young player. And then of course Ian Williams. Now I wanted to ask you a little bit about Ian Williams, their kicker, because Carolina has had some struggles at the kicking position. Noah Ruggles looks a little bit better now after he's come back in after his benching, but that's still an area of a little uncertainty. Ian Williams is a guy that I've seen, big, strong leg, really accurate, especially for the high school level. And this is a school that's produced kickers before. What is his comparison to Keith Duncan? Is he a guy that you could see being as successful as Keith, who is the starting kicker right now at Iowa, if you didn't know?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, they just have a great legacy of kicker. The county does, actually.
Right,
the county does a great job of producing kickers. But, yeah, Ian Williams is obviously a different body type than Keith Duncan. Keith's one of the most accurate place kickers in the state of North Carolina. I think he holds a record in North Carolina high school football. But, yeah, he compares very strong to what Keith did. I think, obviously, he's, 6'3".
Yeah. Much
really
bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very accurate, can boom the ball, and, I've seen him from practice kicking it 60 yards with plenty to spare, which is crazy. But, yeah, I think you're looking at a kid. I mean, the one thing that Weddington, and this is really important, I think, when you're looking at recruiting a kid out of that high school, is that not only are they great, there's great talent there, and they have great coaching, but the Weddington, these kids are smart. And when they're out on a football field, they're always in position to make a play. I mean, these coaches have to tell them one time, and that's it. So I don't want to discredit the coaches and say it's easy over there, but these kids are smart. And I think, they know what it takes to get things done on and off the football field. And I think Ian Williams would be a great benefit to any school to come in as a 6'3", maybe 6'4" kicker as a freshman, sophomore, to lead that special teams over the next 3 or 4 years. Ian Williams is certainly one of the top kids you're looking at in the county for sure.
Yeah, so
he's got 3 or 4 offers right now, and Carolina's one of them.
Right. Well, Carolina does have a preferred walk-on spot for him right now. They don't have the official offer on the table just yet, but you feel like if Carolina does continue to struggle, you always want to save your scholarship offers for your position players, but if they do continue to struggle, I wouldn't be shocked if they do end up ponying up and giving him a scholarship offer. That would be one of my first guys in the state, especially with Joshua Carty, who comes out of Western Alamance High School up in Elon, already committed to Stanford. He's a guy that I think ranks as a 3 or 4 star, which is really good for a kicker. Usually the recruiting services don't rank him that high. But Ian Williams is a guy that I think everybody should keep an eye on as we go throughout the rest of this class. as a preferred walk-on or potentially a scholarship guy. So we go from, you talked about Will Shipley being the first 5-star in the county. We go from the first 5-star in the county to the second 5-star in the county. Another guy that's coached by a really great head coach in Shalik Knotts out at Monroe, coached by Johnny Sowell, who has been a great coach there for a while. And of course, most people probably remember a couple of years ago, a guy in Travion Kenyon coming out of there. Shalik Knotts, now the next big wide receiver name at Monroe. I went and actually saw him the other night against Parkwood and was relatively impressed. He didn't really receive that many targets because it was a cold night, and the quarterback, Matthew Bennett, ended up leaving with a wrist injury in the second quarter. So, when you look at Shalik, though, just give us a little bit of what you've seen from him and what kind of prospect this kid can be going forward.
Yeah, he is a great talent. I mean, Shalik's been doing this now for 2 years. As a sophomore, had a very good freshman year. Mm-hmm. His younger brother was a part of the 2016 undefeated Monroe Redhawk team, Braxton Knotts, right, who was one of the fastest kids I've ever seen on a football field. Now, Braxton didn't have the height that his big brother had, that his younger brother has, and Shalik's got very good size, and that body's still going to develop. Right. Up in the air, he's got great control of his body. Makes really difficult catches look very easy. He's a nice target, big target, and he's benefited greatly from the Matthew Bennett transfer over this year, having a strong-arm quarterback. And I think if it wasn't for Bennett's injury, and I think, did Shalik come out of that game as well? Didn't he?
Yes, Shalik Knotts did suffer an injury on the last offensive play for Monroe. It looked like it may have been a knee injury. It was to his left leg, and unfortunately he had to be carried off by the coaching staff, and then eventually was actually carted off the field to the team bus. So, yeah, it definitely didn't look great for Shalik. Hopefully, we of course are wishing him the best, but he did end up suffering an injury. So yeah, Monroe's going to go in beat up against. They'll actually be facing off against a Tar Heel commit in 2021 athlete Dontavius Nash and the Hunter Huskies. But yes, he did go down with an injury, and of course we're wishing Shalik the best. But really talented kid. They had him. On defense, they had him at safety, and I thought, he played all right there. He's not a guy that's going to really help you in run defense. He's a guy that's pretty much going to play that free safety spot about as pure as he can with being a last line of defense against the passing game. But when they moved him to corner, he looked really good. He had the interception that gave Monroe an opportunity to drive down in the fourth quarter and potentially tie it or take the lead. Unfortunately, they weren't able to, but he looked really good, especially in man coverage against those Parkwood receivers. So, he's a really talented young player, like you said, and definitely a guy to keep an eye on.
Yeah, he's proved on that, offensively, but he has proved defensively. I think last year he had a few picks, and this year he was number 2 to his teammate. I think he finished up with 5 interceptions during the regular season. Mm-hmm. His teammate, Salen Streeter, had 6. So, he certainly knows how to go up for the ball on both sides of the ball. So,
those are the guys to keep an eye on in Union County for the Tar Heels right now. Is there any other names, Tim, that we should maybe be keeping an eye on? Some of these younger guys in the county, or maybe just some guys that aren't quite on the radar just yet that maybe could get on the radar as we go forward over the next year or two?
Yeah, well, we talked about him a little off air. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the one kid. This is a no miss. Guy, as long as he stays healthy. Sun Valley, where Gavin Blackwell is, or it's coming where Sam Howell is, and Sam could probably talk about this kid as well because he probably saw a lot of him in middle school. Is this kid Tony McFadden? He'll be a sophomore next year. The kid is a dynamic running back. Can play defense as well, both sides of the ball. Terrific baseball player. You're getting a full package athlete here, and he's got D1 written all over him. You're familiar with Under the Radar. Mm-hmm. They were. I reached out to them. they were so impressed, they actually did a video on him. And within 2 or 3 days, he had thousands upon thousands of views. He's probably well over 10,000 views on his Under the Radar video.
Wow.
And they actually even invited him out to California over the summer to work out at their facilities and to meet USC, the UCLA coaching staff. So this is a kid that tremendous ability, tore up a traditionally strong, well-coached Holy Trinity middle school team where, the kid scored multiple touchdowns out of the backfield, harassed out of the backfield, had the strength to break those tackles and to score long touchdown runs. Very fast, quick feet, great hands. The kid's got it all. So Tony McFadden, a few years away, going to be a sophomore next year, but that is one kid definitely to take a look at for sure.
Well, there you go. I'm going to tell you, nobody in the recruiting world has that name on their radar just yet. Tim Winters does, though. He's been doing this for a long, long time. Tim, great to have you on, man. I know, you don't. You're kind of a local hero here in Union County, but we want to expand your horizon just a little bit. We want people to know about Tim Winters because you do such a great job covering this area, and we're glad you could stop by with us and talk a little bit of Union County football and talk about some guys that, one guy that is at Carolina and some guys that could potentially be at Carolina later on in the future.
Well, I appreciate it, Anthony, and all the best to you.
All right, Tim. Hey, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you down the line. All right, buddy?
Thanks so much.
All right. So Tim Winters of UCNC sports, or UCNC football, excuse me. He covers Union County football here in the area, and look, he does a fantastic job. We want to, of course, thank him for stopping by, and of course, talking a little Sam Howell and some of the Tar Heels' other major targets that are coming up in the 2021 and 22 class here in this area. So, that's going to do it for this edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. Make sure you guys check out the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. We are available as well as online at HeelToughBlog.com. Make sure you check out the guy we just talked about, Shalik Knotts. His scouting report is up. Of course, he was injured in that game, and we wish him the best. But he did play most of the game. He played up until the end. So make sure that you guys go back and read our breakdown of his performance against Parkwood to close out his sophomore regular season. Looks like, unfortunately, the end of his sophomore season. So make sure you go back and check that out. And, of course, we're going to have all the coverage for you of the huge matchup tonight for the Tar Heels against the Pittsburgh Panthers. So, once again, want to thank Tim Winters for stopping by. Want to thank you guys for listening. And as always, go Tar Heels!